So good afternoon, dear co-panelist and moderator and all the audience. So here we are going to talk about how to engage local communities to make sure our whatever partnership we want with them and whatever programmings and changes that we are trying to bring, uh, we are bringing, we are ensuring the safety of everyone. So our previous co-panelists have already told about what are the importance of the safety. So I will go directly to understand when we talk about the communities, who are communities. So
Excuse me, sir.
yeah, it's very
Yeah, the audio is a little low. Can you increase the volume, Abbijit?
okay. Let me check first. Let me control this something.
And I take this pause as an opportunity to request participant. If you have any question, please write on chat, and or otherwise you can unmute your mic also in the question hour session. Thank you, Abbijit. Over to you.
Take it. My voice is now more
Yeah,
loud.
definitely.
Maybe. Okay, so when we talk about the local communities, we actually talk about, we uses various words. We sometimes we say beneficiaries, sometimes we say it's a stakeholder, partners. But you understand, they are the most critical and important stakeholder for our work. Whatever we work, we are actually going to work with them. So our accountability is main accountability are towards those beneficiaries, those communities and our partners and stakeholders, whatever we say. Our accountability is also towards the donors who actually donate money for the work. But at the same time, why we need to be very critical, why this community engagement is very critical is that we actually, when we as a humanitarian worker and a development worker, whenever we go, we actually also bring some form of risk to them. Because we are going to them, we are bringing many people along with us. They can be vendor, they can be media people, they can be visitors, anyone else. They are a stranger to them and we are bringing them. So this is our responsibility to make sure that when we are engaging with them, we are also making sure whatever our action or the program is there, all the community members are safe, especially with them with whom we are working. Like I am from Bal Raksha Bharat, also known as Save the Children. So our prime stakeholders become the children. So we make sure whenever any kind of engagements are happening with the community or the children, there are separate kind of checklist that has been followed, and all the risk assessment has been done because we are bringing the risk also to them. At the same time, we want to make changes, but the risk is there. So we need to assess those vulnerability and risk barriers. Local communities in India, I have seen they are very respectable to the civil society organizations. They accept us, but we also need to realize that there is a abuse which may take place because we are in a powerful position. We are going to work with a vulnerable community, and our workers are those workers who can manipulate if they are not well educated, well aware, or the system has some kind of loop and holes. We need to understand that by saying that this is not happening in our organization or this doesn't happen in my organization will not solve the problem. This can happen with anyone else, by anyone else. We don't know how the people's, because it's an individual can be different. We don't know actually. The system need to be very strong when we are working with the local communities. See, we are going to talk about existing local level mechanisms, sexual abuse and exploitation reporting. So what are the existing practices that generally we see? Like child protection policies are there, child safeguarding policies are there, then prevention from sexual exploitation and abuse policies are there, protection of women from at the workplaces are there. There are some legal accountability, like POCSO Act brings some legal accountability. There are also additional guidelines and policies that many a times the state government or the organizations bring. So these are already in place. But if you see what are the minimum standard operating standard which interagency committee has actually recommended. So you can see that there are 8 those standards First is the PSE policies and procedures. So every organization should have a PSE policies, and there should be procedures for raising awareness, informing, and capacity building of all the staff. Then there should be a procedure for reporting and all the investigation. So if you say first your policies are there and the procedure are in place, the next is cooperative agreements with your whoever staff, vendor, whoever are there. You make sure everyone is aware and they agree with your PSC policies. They follow those policies. Third is to make sure that you have a PSC focal point, someone who is accountable and responsible to make sure that something is happening. If any violation is taking place, they are ready to take a report on that. They are ready to be part of the investigation committee if required. So a basic one focal person or a dedicated person or accountable person is essential to make sure the policy is implemented. Now here we are going to talk about three key components, that is community engagement, feedback response mechanism, and internal reporting and investigation. But along with that, we are also talking about staff awareness staging and human resource processes. So these are the 8 key operating standards that generally are followed. We will be focusing more on the 3 aspects: community engagement, feedback and response mechanism, internal reporting and investigation system. See, when we talk about collaborative response mechanism and reporting system, here we actually want to say there should be a clear reporting system. And when you want to develop some kind of response mechanism and reporting system, it's very essential that you have a awareness raising components, you have dedicated training plan, all the checklists are there, basic agreements, or you say basic agreements or the checklist document which everyone who is visiting your field or interacting with your community, they can sign off or they agree with that. Those preparedness are required. Second is the protection, because community as a partner and stakeholders are there, so they also need to be aware about your policy. Otherwise, what happens, they will not be aware about where to report, whom to report, what are the actually exploitation, what are deviation from the policies, so they will be not be aware about that. So you also make sure wherever you are working, you actually inform them who are the focal point in case of any kind of observation that they make and they consider is a violation of a PSEA, they can report to them. So once the community is part of that and they are aware about that, you can actually generate more trust also. You can also safeguard the whole community with whom you are working. Monitoring mechanisms are very important because every PSE should first also be culturally relevant. Every location where you're working may have a different kind of cultural acceptance and norms. So you have to review your PSE policy and make sure that those are culturally relevant, safe and effective mechanism also. So it's not like all the standard policies that we are following in various countries is also relevant in our states. We may have some relevance, but we have to make it culturally relevant also. Then only the community will accept that. See, if you talk about a good practice, then these are the 4 key pillars of a good practices of following a PSE in your organization. First is you should have a committed resources. Committed resources means you should have a committed human resource as well as financial resources. Because you may have to conduct various training, you have to conduct various awareness session also. You may have to conduct some investigation in case of reporting comes, and that may require financial as well as commitment of a dedicated human resources. Awareness and capacity is something which is not something like, okay, once I have done in January, so it's a annually we are doing it. It's a continuous process because human resources are coming on regular interval in every organizations. It's a dynamic situation. So we have to adapt and make sure that we are at least conducting 4 times, 5 times, whatever number of times we can do within our available resources. Make sure you are following those things. Conduct various kind of innovative exercises within the organization to make sure people are responding and taking action on whatever you want them to do. non-reporting is a very serious concern. If you are finding that there is no reporting, don't think that there is nothing happening. So you may have to review it and find out if the awareness and capacity that I have given to them, everyone is aware of that. So generally that we also follow a policy that okay, it is part of the KRA also of the every individuals. When we are doing assessment, we are visiting to the places. We also in every meetings we actually talk with our staff and understand what's happening if all the policies and procedures are following. Awareness and capacity is also something which you also need to be aware them about the processes at your offices. You can put different kind of boards into that says these are the numbers. Here you can complain, you can send, you can raise a issue of concern. So always we say that it is not about reporting an incidence. Even if you identify some form of risk and you say okay, there may be a risk, you can report that. Reporting will safeguard the organization. Third is the participation of the community and participation of the staff. So you also need to participate, ensure their participation. And how it should be done? See, at right of the program designing stage, when you design a program, you go to the community, you understand the cultural context of the community, and based on that, you see if your PSE policies need any kind of changes to work in that location. That is what we need to do. Second is whenever you are making any kind of internal changes within the organization, the PSE module, also go and consult the community to understand if those will be relevant changes that we are making. Fourth is reporting and response mechanism. A good practice required a clear reporting and response mechanism. So everyone in the organization, whoever are working, should be aware that whom to report. That is very clear. And even the community all with whom we are working, they also should be aware whom to report in case of any violations they see or they think it can happen. So this is fourth thing that is very essential to make sure your PSC policy follows a good practice and it achieve their standard. Investigation is also very key. Already my previous speaker told about the confidential principle is very essential. Immediate support is very important. So those things come under the response mechanism. If you see all these three things in community participation, feedback, response, and reporting. So what I said is community participation, if you want, then you make sure the assessment at the local level is happening place. You understand the context and culture, the design phases, identify the risk, make sure you're communicating with them with a clear strategy because it's a very sensitive information. Message and method should be very clear. Discuss changes at every stages with the community, your partner. Feedback and response mechanism, you also make sure that whenever you are making changes or identifying any risk or anything has happened, you also take feedback and take necessary action to make sure your personal PSC module is and the policy is effective. For the reporting, you have to do those at least making sure the focal point are there, suggestions boxes may be one of the option of the phone numbers, email, office. How you are going to communicate, that will depend upon your method, way of communication. But these are some of the standard things that we generally do. We also understand that for investigation, wherever we are going to investigation, first thing is to see if it's falling under your policy or it's a legal issue. Because when you talk about the POCSO cases, POCSO become a legal liability. You can't investigate the POCSO cases. If you have a nature of offences which is directly leading to POCSO cases, the reporting is only mandatory reporting clause are there in the law. So that will not come under the when you are actually investigation. So investigation will come into those cases which are not directly leading to legal mandatory reporting. Whenever investigation team is formed and investigation starts, the TOR clear mandate of the team should be there. What they can do, do's and don'ts are there. The timelines those should be there. Confidentiality and all those principles which my previous speaker was talking, that will come into that part, and to make sure do not harm principles is followed. Fair investigation is done. So these are some of the practices that organizations follow, and we also follow. Thank you. Any questions? Welcome.
Um, Thank you so much, Abhijit ji. It was again, directly coming from the field. The smell of soil was there in your presentation. So, all coming from the practical experiences. You talked about the committed resources. That is the challenge for the whole sector, not in the government sector, not in the non government sector, but also we have seen the ICPS and now under Mission Vatsalya, they have increased the amount. But, the whole sector is challenged by because this becomes a softer component. So, committed resources is a very big issue. You talked about continuous awareness sessions. That is very true. Even for the, refresher courses are required. For the new, those who are newly appointed, for them orientation is okay, but for those who have taken one session or second session, the maturation of sessions should also be there. You emphasized on that thing very rightly. You emphasized a lot on community participation, creating an ownership, having meaningful participation, and very sensitively you talked about that whenever the organization is doing any changes internally, it should not be in isolation because ultimately it is going to affect the community. So community should also be consulted. And you also touched upon the critical aspect of on the one side we talk about the survivor centered approach, and on the other side there is POXO. So we have to understand, we have to follow the survivor centered approach, but case to case basis, we also have to abide by our national law, that is POXO, and there is some mandatory requirement at the individual and organizational level. Thank you so much, Dr. Abbijit. Thank you so much for this beautiful presentation. Now